You might be cool enough to go into space, but that doesn't mean you'll get to celebrate with a glass of champagne. Just ask the astronauts on the International Space Station. Hold on to your sandwiches. Aboard the ISS, bread is a huge no-go. The culprit? Crumbs. In the weightlessness of microgravity, crumbs from bread become dangerous floating objects that NASA classifies as foreign object debris. These are any materials or particles that might cause damage to equipment, making it unsafe, less efficient, or entirely inoperable. The danger of taking bread into space became clear when on March 23, 1965, astronaut John Young smuggled a corned beef sandwich into the pocket of his spacesuit during NASA's Gemini 3 mission. Around 2 hours into the 5-hour flight, Young took out the sandwich and offered it to the mission's commander, Gus Grissom. The interaction lasted less than 1 minute. Young quickly put the sandwich away to reduce the number of crumbs that were rapidly breaking off, posing the risk of floating into the astronaut's eyes or an instrument panel. In 1985, NASA payload specialist Rodolfo Neri Vela found a solution. A crew member aboard the Space Shuttle Atlantis during a mission in 1985, Vela requested that tortillas be included in his food supply. In orbit, the crew noticed that the tortillas didn't create crumbs and served as a great substitute for making sandwiches. Since that mission, tortillas have become a favorite for astronauts in space, being used to make hamburgers, breakfast burritos, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
We got one tortilla. Whoa, got away.
But bread isn't the only thing that's banned. On the ISS, carbonated beverages don't behave like they would on Earth. Because of the lack of gravity on the station, the gas bubbles inside a liquid don't float to the top of the container and escape, simply because in that environment, there is no top. This means that astronauts would consume far more gas than usual when drinking a carbonated beverage, resulting in their needing to burp, often. This is an unpleasant experience for astronauts because the same microgravity that keeps the liquid and gases together in a container in space would keep them together in the astronaut's stomach. Any burping would be a wet mixture of liquid and gas similar to acid reflux, creating its own problems as astronauts struggled to keep the liquid from causing any harm to their surrounding equipment. Interestingly, in 1985, NASA tested carrying specially designed Coca-Cola and Pepsi containers into space on a mission. Both companies developed soda delivery systems that would keep the beverage fizzy without having it uncontrollably spray out into its surroundings. The response from astronauts was mixed, and NASA declined to add the products to its array of space food supplies. So what if you're on board the ISS during the holidays? On Earth, lots of folks celebrate with a little booze, but that won't happen in space. Apart from the obvious fact that you don't want drunken errors in the vacuum of space, there's actually a technical reason for banning alcohol, too. Alcohol poses a risk to the space station's environmental control and life support system. This system's primary responsibility is to maintain the station's clean air and water supply.
It completely recycles the air and the water for the space station crew.
If an astronaut is consuming and breathing out chemical contaminants like ethanol, the compound could interfere with the life support system by messing with its strict purity standards. That doesn't mean that astronauts have never smuggled alcohol on board during their missions. Perhaps the best-known example of this occurred on Russian space station Mir in the 80s and 90s, when astronauts defied official Russian alcohol policy by bringing along cognac on their missions. Traditional seasoning is also a no-go in space, at least not in the way you might think. Given that both salt and pepper are composed of small granular particles, having these float about on the ISS could mean disaster for both the station and its crew. Similar to how breadcrumbs would be problematic for equipment, tiny salt grains could get into all kinds of spaces in orbit, including astronauts' eyes. Instead of pure salt and pepper, astronauts use polyethylene dropper bottles that hold solutions of liquid salt and pepper. The salt is dissolved in water, while the pepper is suspended in oil, the two being applied like condiments to whatever food a crew member desires. Other seasoning and condiment options for astronauts include soy sauce and mayonnaise, which has had the oxygen in its vegetable oil removed to provide a longer shelf life.
Space makes eating a lot more fun.